Okay, and it's begun. Theoretically, I forgot to already have Epic Pen up and ready, so I have to wait for that. There it is. Anybody watching the recording afterwards, you can skip the first some odd minutes. Let's go to the control room, set that to live, dismiss that, wait for that to load. Already muted myself, excellent. Okay, and have the bookmarks, so we just need Google Earth, my nemesis that always stalls out the stream. And this will be short or relatively short, as a lot of the most recent ones have been, as I do have to get off in less than an hour. So let me wait a second or two for everybody to show up, to maybe more. I don't know. I do apologize for the last few times. Streaming at like later hours than I normally would have, but I'm back in a more normal time frame. Uh, 2 p.m. Alaska time, 6 p.m. Eastern U.S. time, where I'm currently stranded. As I, for the few who may not know by now, lived in Fairbanks, Alaska. But after 2020 happened, I did not get my job back like everybody else did. So I had to then come live down here with my parents in South Carolina. Such a fun, fascinating, well run, well infrastructurally maintained place. Uh, yeah, so clean, not like there's mountains of garbage along the side of every road and nobody cares, apparently. Fascinating place. Anyway, we got people four. All right, I'll call that enough to actually start, or at least relatively start. So speaking of my home, Alaska, it was defiled yesterday by the presence of both Putin and Trump. Granted, thankfully, they were only in Anchorage and not actually in Fairbanks. Fairbanks is 500% better for anyone who wants to know. Anchorage isn't bad. It's not bad. I do love Anchorage also. I like visiting Anchorage. I wouldn't particularly want to live in Anchorage. It's like a bit too big for me. Fairbanks is perfect. But they supposedly negotiated, quote unquote, let's put some air quotes here, air quotes, and what came out of it was dot 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 absolutely nothing, because nothing was going to come out of it. Because stop doing the tilt thing. Thank you. Correct yourself. Because everybody's asking for things that the other side isn't actually going to give, and knows that the other side isn't actually going to give. Uh, Putin is, again, with the whole clinical narcissism thing, cannot actually, like, in terms of physiology of brain, cannot back out of this, because doing so for him would actually mean conceding that he made a wrong decision. And Ukraine, regardless of who would be in charge of it, isn't going to willingly concede anything other than Crimea. They did, even in the earliest part, even in the April 2022 stuff, they still actually, although that part was kept kind of hushed, they did, even back then, say they would let go of Crimea, but Russia kind of wants everything. And regardless of who was actually the president of the U.S., uh, U.S. was not going to concede in either direction because the US's military strategic objectives are not really decided on the whims of a president in reality. Those are kind of decided by the Pentagon. However, whatever degree of conspiratorial people choose to willfully think that may be, it's kind of blatantly obvious. And the more beneficial thing uh, to the U.S. from a strategic standpoint is to just let Russia continue bleeding itself, as it's expended the larger portion of its modern and semi modern military equipment, with the main exception being portions of its Air Force, since they eventually stopped really using it because they decided, in a rare strategically smart move, that the loss rate was too high for them to be willing to keep throwing it. With a few exceptions, like once in a while, they will start having some Su-25s and Su-34s doing some like close air support ground attack stuff during pushes somewhere in Donbass. But then they'll start getting lost and they'll end up pulling those back. So, from its military strategic standpoint, uh, at least from the military's point of view, regardless of what the population or president thinks, it is in the US's strategic long term interest to actually let this keep going. And as long as effectively Putin's in charge and thus Russia is irrevocably committed to this, let them keep doing it. And in the meantime, amidst the backdrop of the fake negotiations happening, more and more drone strikes continued across Russia's oil and gas infrastructure. So we had stuff up there and up there, and these ones have ended up being more intense than the ones last year, with the refineries in most of these cases actually having to shut down as opposed to just having like some damage done. So the Saratov refinery, the Ryazan, and whichever other one that one was up there, the that's not Belgorod, that's Kursk. This is Belgorod. Okay, so where's the eraser? Is that the eraser? Yes. Okay. I know what I'm doing. I am a professional. Uh Rostov, and oh, where was the other one? Not wasn't one of those. Where was it? Wait, switch back to the mouse. Yeah, Volgograd. Still burning today. This was from sometime this morning. This is the one in Volgograd. This is satellite imagery. Oh no, that's not a refinery. That's the pumping station. The pumping station was also hit, which is one of the pumping stations for the various pipelines and stuff that flow into Europe, through which Russia used to export a lot of oil and oil products. So even though they also likely knew the obvious that this wasn't really going anywhere, just in case the everything 180'd and sanctions were abruptly lifted from Russia, Ukraine hit the pumping station just in case that was going to happen. Uh, where was the other one though? Oh, yeah. Forgot also. A lot of stuff has been getting halted on rail lines like down around the general southern area, primarily to stop like cargo shipments, although there is a lot of passenger rail traffic in Russia as well, just like there is in Europe, because they do trains there, not like the US. And also, traffic around Moscow is halted at the moment, train wise, as one of the major rail yards there was hit as well, or was no, that wasn't a strike, right? That was uh just a fire that broke out for some reason. Just like this gunpowder factory that just exploded for unknown reasons. I think one of the articles in Russia about it just said a unknown event transpired at the facility, whatever that's supposed to mean. Also, one of their Caspian Sea ports, from which they import stuff from Iran, that's whom they've become dependent on, was struck, and a number of the offloading stations and some of the vessels were hit and sunk as well. And then there was this. So this is zoomed in on the Pokrovsk area. Let me try to find that on the map. There. So hold on, where is, try to get in. Uh, Pokrovsk, that should be it. I can still read Cyrillic, I think. I'm not positive, so I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Pokro. E is V, right? Yeah, so that should be Pokrovsk. Uh, so Pokrovsk, and that is okay. Where's Pokrovsk? All right, so yeah, it's this area, and where's Kramatorsk on this one? I don't see. Kramatorsk must be up there. Okay, this must be more zoomed in than I thought it was. Pokrovsk. Did I lose it? Where's Pokrovsk? Pokrovsk is there. So yeah, it was off to the side here. Wait, does it show those roads? Does it show the roads? That's a road. And there's a highway there. Does it show? Okay. All right, there's that one. Does it show those two? Can I use that? No. Okay. There's all right. There's discrepancy between which roads Google Earth shows and which roads the other map shows. But yeah, it was next to Pokrovsk there, along the fields roughly near this road here, and it went up to, I believe, this town right here, Ruskivka or something like that. And it was basically like a long, elongated thrust outwards. It was very thin, and he didn't really have to be an expert to figure out that this wasn't exactly going to work. Like if it had been wedge, for example, if it had been something like that, that would have been more substantive and more of a chance of being like long-standing. But because it was this really thin, like twig branch thing, where Russian forces, some probably a smaller, not directly being getting orders in the moment group, like broke through somewhere near Toretsk initially and just kind of kept going. And then some other guys just followed them. And then from there, it kind of became a bit less organized. So it ended up getting punched right around like the lower third of it. Oh, no, wait. I have to switch back to the mouse. I know what I'm doing. Oh, no, the upper third of it. Sorry. So it's getting cut into at the base here while also being walled at the top and getting punched through there around the upper third line. So, like, for example, one, for example, this structure here is like I'd consider that a wedge. So if that had happened instead of this thin branch thing, like if it had, been more like an extension upwards like that, that would have actually, been more threatening, had more like staying power. But because it was this haphazardy, like bifurcated twig branch thing, that was kind of doomed. But also, you wouldn't want to, you still also wouldn't want to stack a wedge on top of another wedge because if you repeat that process, like if you then did another wedge up there on a proportional scale, that kind of then still ends up becoming a branch of its own kind. But that still would have been better than doing the twig branch. So we're not sure the like actual orders or mentality behind the sudden thin thrust that went up there. But most people's best guesses are that was probably a in the moment thing, where like one group of Russian forces just kind of broke through that area and just decided to keep running up there, and there wasn't that much like back end coordination to try to like organize something around it. As supposedly they've been pouring a lot more concentrated stuff and larger troop numbers and things towards this area, whether that's for nothing or whether that actually means they want to try to take Zaporizhia. Maybe I don't know. I would really kind of doubt that one though, because they still seem pretty dead set on the securing the totality of Donetsk angle. But I mean, they could YOLO it for all I know and suddenly decide that they want to take the city of Zaporizhia. So that might actually be a serious thing that's going on. But I'm reasonably confident they're still going to be keeping with the Donetsk grab. Uh, was was that everything? That was that. Uh, oh yeah. Fuel prices and banks. Get into that in a second. Uh, Caesar, that was the one. The other one that I forgot about. Where uh Caesar is the city. Where is it actually in? Which oblast is it in? Samara. Okay, so it was oil refinery struck and what the? No, I don't want highlighter. I want solid. Oil refinery struck and down within just the last 2 weeks. Uh, we have Samara, we have Saratov, we have Volgograd, we have Rostov, we have Belgorod, we have Ryazan, which is this one or this one. Which one is it? Which one is it? I think it's the middle one. Nope, it's the end one. All right, and Rostov reaching 60% public transport driver shortage. So that's kind of breaking down. SU-30 was lost. This was not a shoot down on Ukraine's part. This was another maintenance drop out of the sky failure somewhere down here in the southern Black Sea. I have no idea what that eye does. Okay, that's what it does. I didn't hear anything about like the particular engine like component failure, like what was determined to actually be the cause of it. But that it wasn't a shoot down. It was just a drop out of the sky in this case. Uh, Anything else? Taiwan stuff. We'll get to that in a minute. That was more confirmation. I can start clearing some of these. Oh yeah, that was okay. That was 3 days ago. So yeah, Volgograd's been burning for a while. Uh, Let me. Also, okay, I did not remember that one. There were light drone strikes on a manufacturing plant that manufactures some of Russia's like weapons control systems for naval vessels. Although I don't consider that one like that big of an impact on anything because Russia's navy was already not really that legitimate of a force outside of its ability to sit in the Black Sea and launch cruise missiles at Ukraine. Their navy has just never actually been that large and also has kind of just withered on its own. Like their one aircraft carrier that they had that, you know, every time it went out to sea, it was constantly just like billowing smoke and catching fire, draw some fire out of the back there. They finally decided to give up on trying to keep up that image, and so they have officially retired that, and it's going to be scrapped up in St. Petersburg. And like over in the Pacific, out of Vladivostok, they do have some vessels, but the only ones that matter are their small like submarine fleet that they have in the Pacific. In terms of a surface fleet for the Pacific, they don't like even really have one. They have one, I think one or two destroyers and a couple tiny corvettes, and that's basically it. Things that would kind of equal Coast Guard cutters in like the U.S., for example. Their primary concentration has been Black Sea, Baltic Sea, and Arctic waters since as much as they play the two continents card, their focus has in reality always been on Europe. And I think that should be it for everything in that vein. Uh, the the refinery shutdowns have been enough to force them to cut off exports of refined products to make sure that the domestic market remains supplied. The domestic market is still supplied well enough for the moment within Russia. However, the inventories are not all that high. Decent bit of which, forgive the slip there, decent bit of which is because of all the storage tanks and fuel depots that Ukraine has hit over the last 3 years. So storage capacity for oil and oil products within Russia is decently less than it was before the war started. So there is like a maximum ceiling to how high fuel inventories could be to begin with now, but also they were still lower decently than that ceiling was. So the even though they've cut the exports to make sure that domestic demand remains supplied, the domestic prices are still going up. They shot up. Russia somewhat subsidizes fuel prices like a little bit. Not we're not talking the Saudi Arabia example where, for example, in Saudi Arabia, gasoline up until just like 2 or 3 years ago was only 50 cents a gallon, and the government in Saudi Arabia 2 or 3 years ago raised it to 75 U.S. cents per gallon, and that was one of the few times that the Saudi people actually rioted against their government. Uh, to give you an idea of how much they value their eternally super subsidized fuel price. Russia doesn't subsidize it to that degree, but it is kind of a little bit. It's probably like 10 to 15%. Right after the start of the war, Russian fuel prices jumped up to 97 cents per liter because, again, it's not subsidized that much, just a fair bit, and dropped back down afterwards and fluctuated between 60 and 70 cents per liter and started staying on the upper end of that for a bit until these last 2 months where it started going into a logarithmic jump. And as of the end of this week, was back up to 87 or 88 cents per liter. So we'll see if that goes back above the 2022 record high price. Although supposedly Moscow has said that they're considering subsidizing it further, like taking another 10%, like permanent 10% off, but that would require an additional drain from them on top of spending everything from the war, on top of getting less money from everything overall, from all the various negative feedback loops, and from increasing spending of having to bail out critical businesses, especially the banks, so that the banks can then lend money to the government, some of which the government then circularly uses to bail out the banks. All these squares make a circle. So that is all that has gone on there. I'm going to drink some water like a smart person. And I have 24 minutes I can continue for, but I'm going to try to be shorter than that. Ah, congested, as always. Uh, Possible flare up between Iran and Israel again amounted to nothing. As remember, they're under a ceasefire that neither of them has actually been respecting, but they've only been doing really small stuff over the course of it. Last week, as I told you last stream, it looked like it might break because Israel suddenly did one much larger strike using multiple F-35s and bombed an entire airfield somewhere in western Iran. However, it looks like for the moment that was just a one-off deal. They just randomly felt like doing a bigger hit than the occasional, like every 3 nights doing one single bomb drop. So that did not spark back up into anything. Thailand and Cambodia have continued their ceasefire. They have, it's been 2 weeks. They have not resumed fighting each other as of yet. We will see how that continues to go. New China and Taiwan developments, I'll get into in a second. Miss anything? First time. Hello then. Uh, did we get 9 at the most? Yeah, I've really fallen off. I remember the good old days of like a few months ago where we got like 20 whole people. So, we all know this is coming. And earlier this month, China did another mega amphibious landing exercise along portions of their southern coast. This one was the largest one they've ever done, using a significant portion of their existing amphibious transport fleet. And actually, we observed them practicing using civilian vessels, using civilian ferries, and even modified bulk carrier cargo ships to transport stuff. And they were practicing on the shore, setting up those rapid, like improvised offloading ramps to like pour military vehicles out of those kinds of ships. So they are still prepping it up. And also in some of their lakes out west, they have been repeatedly constructing different mock ups of Taiwanese cities and Taiwanese military bases and having their pilots practice shooting at stuff from afar, along with still continuing the daily flyby sorties and running all of their pilots through basically, I've referred to it as terrain recognition, since there's going to be a lot of GPS jamming from both sides when this starts up. So they want their pilots to be able to recognize rough land markers from a distance to then be able to go in and find specific targeted areas. Taiwan, meanwhile, has started an additional prep round of uh, starting up the process of implementing and concealing concealing missile launchers, anti-ship, anti-air, all kinds of stuff inside of like small lorries and small transport vans, of which uh, there, are tens of thousands plus, most likely all throughout the country. So the even if China would like start targeting any like lorry or white van it saw, that would still not be any guarantee to get rid of that threat, because there would just be or there is just an unimaginable, like innumerable amount of them, and literally any single one could suddenly pop its top open and fire off a few anti-air rounds. So on top of having like a lot of their air force and stuff inside of sort of basically dug in tunnel hangars underneath several mountains that have like different exits and stuff in case one or another caves in, to protect their air force from an initial like missile barrage or bombardment. They're also now beginning the process of concealing a number of their anti-air assets. So supposedly the like 2027 would be the last intelligent year to launch it. It This year would have been the best intersection on like a graph where you have like the two probabilities or whatever and the different like overlaying portions, and there's like the intersection point where two or more variables meet. This year would have been the best chance to do it. If they were going to do it this year, though, uh, you would have already noticed the influx of stuff to the coast of Fujian, like we saw during their practice build-up runs in previous years, last year, 2023 and 2022, each one getting bigger in practice each time. But we have not seen any sign of that yet. And if they were really going to do it this year, like I've said, every time it has to be in fall because that's when the waters in the strait are the calmest, and thus the journey across the strait would be the shortest. And thusly, because it would take time to get stuff in place and prep everything, you would see the process of this going on for at least a month, if not two, beforehand. And we're at the point now on the verge of fall where we're probably past the point where we can pretty firmly say it's not happening. They're waiting at least until next year. 2027 would be like the final intelligent year to do it, but supposedly chances are leaning on them doing it next year. But if they skip next year, then 2027 would be the final wise time frame choice to do it in. After that, remote chances of pulling it off would begin decreasing dramatically. But also, there was that supposedly leaked memo from inside Beijing of that Xi Jinping told the PLA to be ready for it by 2027 at the latest. So they also apparently internally came to that same conclusion of 2027 being like the final deadline. So again, we're pretty much past the point where you can probably fairly say they're not going for it this year, unless I'd say like in the next few days or something, they all of a sudden start trying to rush everything in. Even that might still be a practice run at this point. But if it happens within like just the next few days, they start rushing a build up, then maybe. But especially if we go past the end of August and they've done nothing and no signs of that, then yeah, they're at least waiting until next year. But I I do think a lot of the delay is still actually probably them semi back channelly agreeing to wait until enough semiconductor uh, manufacturing has been relocated elsewhere. As it used to be like 90% made in Taiwan. Now, as of this year, it's down to between 55 and 60%. And by the middle of next year, it should be below 50%. Because whether at various governments' urgings or not, or whether the companies just realized as much themselves, they have been relocating their production elsewhere. All right. Uh, Looks like we hit the end of everything with 13 minutes to spare, so I actually succeeded. That will probably be it for this one then. Anybody else have anything critical to say? No. And both are synced, so no. All right. That's going to be it then. Thank you everybody for showing up, and I will see everyone around next time.